My name is Alexander Ma. I'm the New York City admissions counselor for Binghamton. So I've been at my role for about 6 months now, but before that, I was working with the SUNY System Administration. So I was doing admissions work for them for a couple of years, working with all the different SUNY schools. For the students that were admitted this year, congratulations on being admitted into Binghamton. We did receive about 40,000 applications this year, so it's a really big accomplishment that you were accepted. And for all the different prospective students and parents, welcome to this webinar. Before we begin the presentation, I'd like to introduce everyone else that's participating in this webinar with me. Can I start with Pat?
Hi, and congratulations on your acceptance to Binghamton. I'm Pat Roble, and I'm an admissions counselor.
Great, thank you. And then to the pre-law advising team. Alex, please start.
Oh, hi, I'm Alex Jablonski. I'm the pre-law advisor here at Binghamton University.
And Wendy?
Hi, I'm Wendy Martinek. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Political Science. I've been here for 20 years as of this fall, and most of my undergraduate classes are law or law related.
And then last but not least, our tour guides.
Sure, I can start. Hi, everybody. My name is Isabel. I am a senior, and I'm from Mount Kisco, New York in Westchester County. I'm also pre-law. I'm a double major in psychology and sociology, and I have a minor in Africana studies.
I'll go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelsey. I am a junior from Port Washington, New York. I am on the pre-law track as well, and I am a political science and theater double major.
Hi everyone, my name is Hallie. I'm from Rochester, New York, and I'm a sophomore this year. And I am currently double majoring in philosophy, politics, and law, and also psychology with a minor in forensic health.
Awesome. And I know David is joining us right now. Can you introduce yourself briefly?
Hello, everyone. My name is David Babb. I am the Assistant Director of Admission for New Jersey Recruitment. Yeah, that's all.
Thanks, David. So I did host a webinar a couple of weeks ago talking about Harper College, which is one of the 6 schools within Binghamton University. So Harper College has a lot of different flexibility in what you can do. So you can study sciences, liberal arts, different humanities, the different languages. But what's also housed in Harper College is our advising track. So that includes pre-health, pre-med, and we're focusing on pre-law today. So I'd like to turn this webinar to Alex, and he will share his screen with you with his presentation.
So I'm going to give a brief overview of what pre-law looks like at the university. Dr. Martinek is also going to be on this with me, sort of chiming in to give the departmental perspective as we go. Just a quick overview, as Alex mentioned, pre-law is generally housed in Harper College. I'm a general academic advisor also for Harper students. But as a pre-law advisor, I work with students in every college at Binghamton. I work occasionally with prospective students like yourselves, and I work extensively with alumni too. So once you've graduated, whatever you get your degree in from Binghamton, you're more than welcome to come back. I work with people who've been away from the university for 10, 20 years sometimes, and they'll come back and we still do advising. We'll go quickly through. So what I wanted to talk about in this presentation is kind of what pre-law looks like at the university and kind of how I imagine it, because it is the kind of, we'll talk about a way, and it's kind of an unstructured track, different from some other pre-professional tracks you might be familiar with. Best place to start, I think, is to talk about basically what pre-law means. And generally, I take it to mean preparation for a legal career, and specifically, in most cases, preparation for a career as a practicing attorney. Now, that's not every case, but that's the bulk of the students that I work with, students who are intending to go to law school. So we can start here, right? Students on pre-law are in one way or another considering becoming lawyers. And a lawyer is somebody who's an advocate, who's a counselor, who's a negotiator. They work in all kinds of different fields, as you can see sort of at the bottom there. But commonly, they all hold the JD from a law school, and the JD is a general degree, a Juris Doctor. It qualifies someone to practice law in just about any legal field, with the partial exception of patent law, for which you would need to also pass the patent bar. And actually, you don't always have to have a law degree to do that. You must also be admitted to a state bar to practice. So once you hold the JD, you can practice in a jurisdiction to which you've been admitted. The kind of governing feature of pre-law is that lawyers work in everything. They work in every field. They work in every kind of job. They work in every area of American public life. And you can see a sort of a list of some of the broad categories there, but public interest sorts of things, public service and government-oriented things, private practice, large companies, small firms, nonprofits, all over the place. In every kind of area that you can imagine has a legal dimension to it, and often has lawyers working on multiple sort of sides of that one issue. Specialized training in the law tends to come through some law school courses, clinics, and internships, but often through work in the field. Once you've graduated with your JD, you can get further specialization in the form of legal masters and LLM. Not as common, more common in some fields than others, and very common for some attorneys who are coming from overseas to practice law in the United States. So that leads us to the big question. If you're a pre-law student, how do you prepare to attend law school and become a lawyer? This comes from the ABA. Please don't feel obliged to read the whole thing. But what's important is that the American Bar Association, which is the major accrediting board for American law schools, says two things that we take as guiding principles for pre-law. One, there is no recommended major or course of study for legal education. So there's nothing that is prescribed. There's no prerequisite. We're going to talk about what students should be doing instead, but there is nothing that has to appear on the transcript. There's no major you have to have in order to be qualified to go to law school. And that's important because lawyers aren't sort of a one-size-fits-all kind of thing, right? Lawyers work in lots of different areas, and so they can come from many different backgrounds and be successful lawyers because so many different backgrounds are relevant to the practice of law. Instead, lawyers or prospective lawyers are encouraged to pursue an area of study that interests and challenges them, and take advantage of opportunities to develop the kinds of skills that are going to be necessary to be a successful lawyer. So research, writing skills. To that, I would add reading and strong interpersonal skills. So I want to talk about what that looks like at the university in two ways. The first is the question that I get most often, and that is, what has to appear on my record? Okay, so you're telling me that I don't have to have a major, you're telling me I don't have to have any set classes, but what do I have to do? What actually has to appear? The first thing is, following the line of the ABA, is you have to have an outstanding record of academic achievement that reflects a couple of things. You need to take a course of study that is interesting and challenging to you. This can be anything. It really can be anything. Now, some of the most common are things like political science, or our PPL program, philosophy, politics, and law, or history or English, some of the sort of the usual suspects you might expect. But I've had engineering students apply. I've had psychology students apply, management students apply, theater students and art students apply. I think the only program at Binghamton for which I have never had an applicant is nursing. For obvious reasons, I don't think you would go through the rigorous nursing program here if you didn't intend to be a nurse. But that's not to say that they didn't then become lawyers down the road. So while you're pursuing that course of study, you need to be developing those essential skills that the ABA has called out. So strong analytical reading and critical thinking skills, very strong writing skills. That is, the stock and trade of a lawyer is to write. Research skills. Basically, as an attorney, you were taking a very complicated and arcane body of information that makes sense to no one but you, and making it useful for other people. You're interpreting it, you're putting it into practice for other people. And so as much as you can be trained and develop proficiency in taking arcane, esoteric information, difficult texts and language, and digesting it, processing it, applying it, the better attorney you're going to be. You can get that in a lot of different places, lots of different majors. And even if you're in a major that doesn't tend to focus on that, say you're in a performative arts major, or you're in a hard science major that doesn't have the same kind of writing an attorney would do, well, that's what you've got writing classes, that you've got gen eds for. So it's not like those majors are exclusive of these kinds of skills. You need a strong record. So the GPA and the LSAT are the two most important numbers for law school applications. It's hard to get around that numbers game. And so having a strong record, strong GPA from Binghamton is important. You need to get involved outside of the classroom. Those activities don't need to necessarily be law related, but like the major, they need to be rewarding, they need to be compelling, they need to be something you can invest yourself in. You seek out leadership experience and opportunities. Join a student group. It doesn't have to be law related. I have some examples in a minute of things you could do, but join something that you can invest yourself in, and pick things judiciously. You're not building a resume necessarily. You're picking the things that you can really spend some time in rather than just sign the sign-in sheet. Character and fitness is an issue that I like to bring up early on, because when you apply to law school, you will be asked all kinds of questions about your academic history, about your student conduct, and about your legal history that you have to answer honestly, because they are very relevant to your bar admission down the road. The easiest thing to say right now is stay out of trouble. That's sort of the best course of action. If something comes up, I'm a resource. I'm happy to talk to you about how that should appear on an application and what its relevance might be. But for right now, it's easiest to say if I've got you early to stay out of trouble. And then finally, develop good, solid relationships with professors and mentors. So you want to be seeking out professors, people who can ask you interesting questions, who can point you to interesting opportunities, who can be your sounding boards as you're thinking about your career and your interests, and ultimately people who will provide you recommendations, who will know you well and can write on your behalf when you apply. So that is, in short form, kind of what you should be looking for and what I tend to work with students on as a pre-law advisor. Things that would appear on your record and you can put on a resume that you can point to. But I think there's a dimension to pre-law that is often overlooked that I tend to think of as more important, and that is the broader investigatory aspect of being a pre-law student, right? It's flexible. There is no required major, there's no required courses, and so this is very different from something like a pre-health field. And you've got a lot of opportunity as somebody who may be interested in law to really spend your time in undergrad exploring what it is you're interested in, exploring what it is you value, what passions you have, and then figuring out the best ways for you to act on them in a professional way. So you don't have to come in saying, I know I want to be a lawyer and commit to that from day one. In fact, I don't think you should commit to that for several years because you have so much time to investigate how you want to operate in the professional world and then to figure out if law is the right means to do that. And so as you're picking classes, as you're choosing opportunities, don't think of this as building a resume. Think of it as taking opportunities to understand who you are and what you want to do. And if law ends up being the right way to do that, great. If not, I'm not a recruiter for law schools. I'm not invested in a professional sense in pushing you into law school. I'm here to help you make the right decision. And you'll find that a lot of mentors, Dr. Martinek and lots of other people you'll be working with at the university feel similarly, right? We want to make sure that we want to help you understand and help you to kind of piece together your sense of self and your goals. So really, as you're doing this, I think the big question to be considering is not really, do you want to go to law school? That's sort of an intermediate step to something, but do you want to be a lawyer? Is that what you want to spend your professional career doing? And if you do, why? And by the time you apply at the end of your senior year or maybe afterward, you want to strive for some kind of a compelling reason, something you can tell law schools, but something you can also tell yourself that will get you through a very trying experience and sustain you in a very challenging career. So that's pre-law kind of in a nutshell. Enjoy the flexibility, keep it in the back of your mind. We don't think of it as a track, we think of it more as kind of a state of mind. Take opportunities to explore this interest, but also keep yourself open to other things because you have a unique opportunity to explore all these different things. So a couple of things you can be doing, and that I often will point students to on campus that might be helpful in this regard. We have a number of student groups, and some of our panelists today participate in some of these. Pre-law societies, a pre-law fraternity, we've got mock trial team, there's also a debate team. We have the Binghamton Law Quarterly, which is a student-published quarterly journal of law articles. Students can participate in the student conduct process, either as people basically adjudicating that process and handling charges against students, or as advocates for students charged with conduct violations. And we've got a number of offices on campus beyond my own and some of the departments to help you get involved. So there's the Fleischman Career Center, which is a good entry point for internships. Center for Civic Engagement coordinates with a lot of community groups. Harper Edge for Harper students is a great professional development organization. And there are lots of opportunities for students to do networking and job shadowing at home. I should say right now, and this is a good segue into the next slide, probably the most important thing you can be doing as somebody who's interested in law is talking to attorneys, is getting to know what it is that an attorney does and figuring out if that's the kind of work you want to do. Networking is hugely important to the legal profession. So on the one hand, you're building professional context, but also you're getting a sense of what the day-to-day grind of a lawyer looks like, which can sometimes be quite a bit different from the big abstract ideas that maybe got you there in the first place. So if you're thinking about, I want to save the world, I want to help people, I want to make money, I want to achieve a certain level of professional standing, I want to fix this problem or that problem. These are big ideas, which are no less important as organizing principles, but you got to know too, at a day-to-day level, what doing those things looks like. And there's no better way to do that than to get involved with attorneys. Locally, we have a lot of internship opportunities for students. These are just a number of offices that students regularly work at. You see, it's weighted heavily toward public interest, that is public service kinds of positions. So the DA, the public defender, county attorney, some county offices, the attorney general, legal aid society, which is a nonprofit. And that is because it just tends to be the kind of, there tend to be more openings, in my experience anyway, at those sorts of organizations. But we do have some private firms in town where students will work as well, sort of in a paralegal capacity. And there are analogs to this all over the state and all over the country. So every county is going to have similar offices. Every county is going to have law firms. Every county is going to have these kinds of things. So you can use this as kind of a template too if you're going back to Long Island or Westchester or Manhattan or back to New Jersey, and you're looking for other kinds of things you might be able to do. These are offices that you'll find analogs there. So a couple of questions about what our students do. I know we got a few of these in the emails before the session. Our students do quite well applying to law school. I didn't put a ton of data up here, but you can see some of our, in the past application cycle, our most popular schools, which is pretty representative, and then some honorable mentions as well. So what this suggests is our students, by and large, tend to attend law school in the New York City area. It's just simply a feature of the fact that most of them come from the New York City area and around there and want to go back there to practice. So most students, most law school graduates start their careers in the area where they went to law school. So if you want to practice in the city and you have roots in the city, generally our students going back there. But you can see as well that we're well represented at some very highly ranked schools around the country. We send students every year to the T14 if you follow that kind of thing. To the Washington, D.C. area, to the Boston, to California. So we're well represented. We're above the national average by about 10% in terms of acceptance rate, above the national average for the LSAT. So our students do well, and I would say Binghamton is a good platform for somebody interested in practicing law. We have a large base of alumni attorneys who are very active. I think we're very, very fortunate that they're as active as they are with us, and they work very often with our students. They're very supportive with them. So I want to include something in here. You maybe got a sneak peek of it there. One thing I really try to put front and center at a lot of my advising, particularly now, is I like to frame it as an investment. Some of you have maybe seen these figures before. If you haven't, I apologize for sort of tearing the Band-Aid off. Law school is expensive. It's extremely expensive, and it gets more expensive every year. And we're heading into a situation where the future, so the economic situation is a little uncertain. And so I like as early as possible to introduce students to the idea that this is going to be a sizable investment, a larger amount of money than you've spent on anything, probably up to this point. And to make sure that this sort of underlines my emphasis on preparation, having a compelling reason to attend before you go, knowing what it is you're getting yourself into, because when you're 20 years old, 21 years old, you can sign a loan for $300,000. Sometimes sight unseen, right? You don't really, you might not know if you want to be an attorney, and you can be on the hook for that much money. So there are ways to defray that, scholarships and things like that. And I'm going to talk with students a lot about that, but it's worth knowing, I think, the costs up front, because this is an investment, and you want to put yourself in a position where you're as much as possible assuring yourself a reasonable return on that investment in the form of professional satisfaction and as low a debt load as you can. There's a complicating factor I like to talk about as well, which is that we tend to have this kind of cultural idea that lawyers make a ton of money, and some do. But in general, lawyers make salaries commensurate with their peers in other professions who hold graduate degrees. And you can see this kind of strange salary curve here. The bulk of attorneys are making, salary. This is starting attorneys, starting out with salaries between, $50,000 and $100,000, for first year out of graduate school students. There's a spike over, it's now $190,000 or so. That's first year associates at very large firms like you'd find in New York City or DC or California. That's about 18% of lawyers, and it's a very particular kind of job, a particular kind of professional workplace. If you want that kind of thing, and if that's what you're out there for, then that job is out there. But if you're looking at public service, different kinds of work, the salaries are maybe different than you're expecting, and this complicates the picture of the investment in law school. For me, it means that you need to take it very seriously, because you can't just say, well, I'm going to be making a ton of money, and so I don't have to think about it. I think it really does everybody a service to think about it early on. That's as much as I'll say about that now. We can talk about that in the questions if you like, but I try to bring it up in every presentation, and I talk with students a lot about it because I think that this financing piece is very important. So my role, and I'll turn it over to Wendy here in just a second too, to talk a little bit from the department perspective. As an advisor, I talk at length about basically everything that I just mentioned, which is the degree and career planning piece. I meet with students every day in my office or remotely now, walk-ins and appointments, talking about everything from, I don't even know what law is, why would I do that, to I'm actively applying, I'm in the middle of my LSATs, or I got my offers from schools and I don't know how to negotiate, or, between different scholarship offers. everything in between. What should I be doing with my time here, and how should I put myself in a position to apply? Do a lot of support for law school applications, helping students to choose law schools, working on the documents involved in the application process, a little bit of LSAT prep stuff, and as I mentioned, the negotiating offers. I host a number of events too. My office is very busy with events throughout the year. Obviously, things have quieted down a little bit this semester, but we're optimistic about the fall. We do a big law day, a law fair. We have about 80 or so law schools in attendance every September. I run a number of informational sessions, much like this one, although I go into greater depth every semester. We have been working with our alumni office to fund law school visits largely in the tri-state area. We do a lot of networking and class events in the city. I do, as you can see, some partnered events with different law schools on a pretty regular basis. We have some competitive scholarships for juniors and seniors. We do a pre-law summer public interest internship program that we've just finished placing students for this coming summer. I have a listserv students can get on. That's where I send information about all of this stuff and try to keep in touch. Wendy, I don't know if you wanted to just say a couple of words about just your perspective as a member of an academic department who works with pre-law students, or we can leave that for the panel too, whichever you prefer.
I do have a few things that I'd like to share.
Sure.
So the first thing is, although I'm a political scientist, I'm not an advocate for students who want to go on to law school necessarily to major in political science. I really want to underscore how important it is for students to find a major that actually speaks to what their interests are, because the truth is that law, the questions about law that people might be interested in, can be studied from a variety of disciplinary perspectives. So students should pursue those opportunities based on what their interests are. And this also relates to the fact that law school itself, that is the specialized training. Mm-hmm. That is what law school provides, is the specialized technical training that's necessary for actually embarking on a career in the law. There's two reasons that students, I hope, will take seriously that they should really be casting a broad net to find where it is that they feel comfortable in terms of selecting a major. And there's two reasons for this. One is just the practical thing that students will do better, get more out of their classes and perform better in those classes if they're majoring in something that really is of interest to them and where they're connecting with faculty, where they're connecting with their fellow peers in their classroom. And you're just going to do better, which if you are interested in law school down the road, that means your record is stronger. So you have more choices and perhaps more fellowship or scholarship opportunities. So that's really important. The other reason that I would encourage students to really make sure that they're finding a major that fits them, that feels like home, which by the way isn't easy to do in 1 year. Usually it's not until the second year, in my experience, that students have actually connected with enough faculty members to actually get a sense of that. But the second thing is, it's never too early to start developing those relationships with faculty members and other mentors. It's not common, but it's not unheard of that I'll have students asking, for example, in the fall of their senior year for a letter of recommendation for law school when I've either never met them or I've had them in a class for the first time that fall. It's hard to write such letters because they don't know much very specific about the student. There's a big difference between that and the students that I've had in a couple of classes over the course of their time at Binghamton. I always tell students, you want to be in a position that you don't even have to ask for the letter and the faculty member is already volunteering to do that. And that only happens when we get to know who these students are. And again, you're more likely as a student to visit faculty and chat with them and take repeat classes with them if it's an area that you particularly find interesting. I'll also mention that I agree with Alex 100% that it's really more of a state of mind. And what I like about that kind of perspective on it is a couple of things. But first and foremost, what I like about it is it's the understanding that the skills that you need to develop in the classes that you're taking, regardless of what major, it turns out that those same skills, so working with challenging information, abstracting complex principles and applying those in novel situations, engaging in high-level communication, both orally and in writing, it turns out that all of those skills, which you can get from any number of majors on campus, virtually every major on campus, Those are really good for law school, but they're also really good for pretty much anything else you want to do. So I take it as a very positive thing when students know they have an interest in, potentially have an interest in law, and they actively solicit and gather information about that. But I also appreciate when students keep an open mind as to where it is that they're heading, because they might hit upon something in their coursework or one of their other experiences they hadn't anticipated. And it turns out that whatever they were doing when they thought that they were pre-law will still end up being very helpful for them. There's one other thing that I wanted to mention, and that's to highlight something that's on this last slide that Alex put up, and it's about the pre-law summer public internship program. So this is something that's sponsored by the Harper Law Council, so Binghamton alum who've gone on to become attorneys. This is a paid internship over the summer that's expanded each year, and it's one example of how alumni have really invested in Harper and our current students. And this is the kind of thing that I think really enriches students' experience. What I like about it is that paid internships are few and far between. And this is a situation in which even students who might otherwise feel that over the summer that they need to have a job, that they can actually have an income while they're actually pursuing an internship. And I don't think it's ever too early for students to get that on their radar.
Thank you, Wendy. Completely agree. The program is really wonderful. I'm happy to talk a little bit more about it if people have questions, but I think for the moment, maybe we can turn it over to general questions. I'm sure we've gotten some, and we can invite the rest of our panelists to participate. I'll stop sharing my screen now, and we can see everybody again.
Oh, did you want to share your screen for a second so they could take down your contact information?
Oh, yeah, sure. Where'd it go?
But thank you very much for that. The presentation is really informative, Wendy and Alex. So the first question I want to ask the panel is actually for the tour guide, so I can give you a break. So kind of why did you choose Binghamton as a college you want to attend? Why did you choose kind of like your respective majors, and why did you kind of like decide to choose pre-law actually?
I can answer that question first. So in general, for choosing Binghamton, I originally started looking at really small liberal arts schools because I was someone who believed that I liked small groups and I needed intimate connections and I wanted my classes to be smaller. And what happened was the second, I mean, this is such a cliche story, but the second that I toured Binghamton, I immediately realized that it was a better fit for me because I really believe that Binghamton has the intimate feel of a small liberal arts school. So you know, our classes, of course, there are larger classes, but our classes and our faculty are amazing at catering to a lot of people. And, you know, we have residential communities where you come home to like a little neighborhood at the end of the day instead of just like a building. And we have different clubs and organizations that really help you find your people. But at the same time, it has a lot of the resources that small liberal arts schools don't tend to have. So research opportunities, I was doing research as soon as sophomore year. I did it all throughout until senior year. So things like that. I participated actually in the Harper Law Council Public Interest Internship, which having a paid internship working in public interest law as an undergrad is like a really rare thing. But because we have alumni that have the resources to help us, I think that is amazing. So I had the best of both worlds for me. And then pre-law in general, I did a few internships. I really recommend internships, even if they're not paid. Like if for some reason, you know, you have your mom's friend, or you have a connection who is a lawyer, if you can't get paid, just do it for like 2 days a week over the summer. You know, you don't have to do it for a long time because I know how hard it is to work and not get paid, just to have exposure to different things, because that will really show you the everyday experiences of a lawyer. And I also recommend trying out different kinds of law as well. So that's my long-winded answer.
Thank you. Kelsey or Haley, do you want to share?
Sure, I can go. I really chose Binghamton because I had such a positive experience in contacting a lot of the advisors before I went, because I had a lot of questions. And so I had a really positive experience contacting the advisors and the information that they were able to give me. And I ultimately decided to choose Binghamton because I have a lot of interests that are kind of spread out and not really one thing that I want to focus on. And I found that Binghamton had opportunities for me to double major, opportunities for me to be involved in tons of different clubs, and I didn't have to choose one and just focus on one. And that's something that if you ask any of the tour guides, any students here, they're all involved in 100 different things and they love them a lot. And that's why I think I chose Binghamton ultimately.
So my reasons for choosing Binghamton were pretty much Kelsey and Isabel's reasons mushed together. I love the extracurriculars, I love the research aspect, and I really love the feel of Binghamton. But my major minor combination in general, I chose for some pretty specific reasons. So my first major is psychology. I've always loved psychology. I just love learning about how people think and why they do what they do. And PPL, which is philosophy, politics, and law, I was also interested in because it has such a wide scope of political science, of history, of philosophy classes that you kind of get to pick and choose while still staying in a major that has a track that has required courses and has professors that want to help you. So that was the perfect double major for me. And then I also found the forensic health minor through our Decker School of Nursing. And that was kind of the intersection that brought both of my majors together. And so far I'm very happy with the track that I'm on and pre-law in general. My dad was a lawyer, my dad is a lawyer, my grandpa was a lawyer, I come from a lot of lawyers, so I always thought that could be a possibility. So I kind of just signed up for the pre-law track to see what Binghamton has to offer, what resources I can start utilizing.
Awesome, thank you very much. And to follow up with that question, did you find it to be difficult to double major and also be the pre-law track as well?
So not at all, really. I've gotten pretty good at balancing my schedules and balancing my time, just learning time management and how to take which classes. So that's definitely helped working with both pre-law advisors and Harper advisors. They've really helped me get my schedule down, get my classes down so that I can complete my mind and be on the pre-law track. All in my 4 years at Binghamton. So working with advisors and people that know what they're doing is definitely really helpful, and it's always good to see a friendly face, just someone who you know you can go talk to.
Thank you. So this question came up a few times in the Q&A, and this is for the advisors. Is there a best time to declare that you want to be in the pre-law advising track?
No. So there isn't. There's very little that you actually have to declare in any kind of like administrative way. You know, if you come in and you're interested in law, I'll meet with you. You know, even before you come in, I'll meet with you, because there isn't really a hard checkpoint that you have to pass through. I think that the real thing that sets the timeline is when you would want to apply and when you would feel ready to take your LSAT and go to law school and all those kinds of things. And that kind of determines it. For some people, they're ready to go right out of the gate and they're able to apply at the beginning of senior year and go right through. Some people, it takes some time. Many people take some kind of a gap year. But I talk to a lot of students who come in and they explore a little while and they don't know that they're interested in law until their junior or their senior year, because it takes a while to explore different things, or you're on a particular path and you think that's what you want to do, and then your interests kind of slowly take you in a different direction. And so I meet with people all the time who come in, you know, they're about to graduate and they say, am I way too late to do this, to have this meeting with you? And I say, no, you know, there's no reason to do it before you're ready. And for some people, you're not ready until, you know, it takes a little bit more time. And I don't think that means that you're behind, because you're not racing anybody but yourself. But so I guess the short answer is no, come in and meet with me whenever you want.
Awesome, thanks. So this question is from Saeed. So he wanted to know of the students who do not end up having a legal career, what kind of other career paths are there out there kind of for people under the pre-law advising track or PPL or political science?
Yeah, maybe I'll start, and then Wendy, I would love to hear your perspective on this too. So I tend to come from a perspective, and I know that this doesn't fit everybody, and I understand that. I tend to think that law school, because of the cost involved, is really only something to undertake if you intend to practice, because that's typically what you would need the degree for. Now, there are careers out there for which the degree is a benefit, but not required. And for students interested in that kind of a thing, certain kinds of policy and advocacy work, research work, or just careers in business that are law and sort of compliance adjacent, all kinds of things. The law degree is beneficial for basically anything you would want to do, but not required for most things. And I think that in a situation like that, I think students should think long and hard and seriously consider other avenues to that kind of work that may be less time and money intensive. Now, some people don't know that until they get through law school, you know, in which case that's a separate thing. But that tends to be my perspective. For students who are interested in law but don't want to attend law school, where it's never part of the conversation, don't want to be lawyers, then we talk about what kind of area of life do you want to work in, because that's ultimately what you should be thinking about anyway, as somebody who's thinking about going into law. Law is a tool with which you can affect certain things. So what is the thing you want to affect? What's the realm of public life that you want to be involved in? And what is it about the legal dimension of that that interests you? Because often if you take that area of life, say it's public health, right? And maybe you want to be, there are certain careers in law where you're working representing clients or patients, or representing healthcare systems or insurers or something like that. But there's so many other ways of approaching that same area as a social worker, as a psychologist, as an administrator, as an accountant, right? That you could still be affecting that same area of life. And so we would have a kind of broader conversation about how to get into that space. But Wendy, I wonder what your thoughts are.
Well, there's a variety of different, I don't think there's anything except something that's very technical, say, for example, chemistry. I don't think that it's fair to say that any of the majors lead directly to a specific job. I can speak to the issue of political science. We have a lot of students, as you might imagine, who end up going on to work in the public sector, so working for state or local governments, or potentially working in campaigns and elections. One of the things that I would say is that, and I want to say this precisely, it's not that the degree is not preparation for a job, it's that it's not preparation for a particular job. It's giving you a set of skills, it's giving students a set of skills, analytic thinking, and being able to communicate clearly, as we discussed earlier, that is going to be applicable in a variety of different settings. Again, I'm going to emphasize, it's one of the things that I like about the fact that there isn't, as Alex said, like hard checkpoints where somebody has to officially check in as a pre-law major. In fact, there isn't a pre-law major, it's any major, is because students need that opportunity to explore what their interests are, particularly because there's a big difference between, often there's a big difference between what a student studies at the high school level and what they think that discipline needs versus what they realize that discipline means via, for example, research opportunities once they're at the college level. So a student who, for example, may have had no interest in history as an undergraduate, because as a high school student, might realize as an undergraduate student that they love history because of the difference in how the disciplines operate at those two different levels.
If I can, I want to underscore something that Wendy said right there, that it is an anxiety I hear from a lot of students about, I'm interested in this thing, but I don't know what this major is, what this is going to do for me, or something that a conversation students have with family members when they go home, having to explain what it is that they're doing, right, with their studies. And I think those are good conversations, because very few things, I would even say in the professional schools, that seem very straightforward, a business degree, an engineering degree, something like that. Nothing is self-explanatory. Nothing speaks for itself, and I don't think anything should speak for itself. I think the responsibility of a student, whether they're interested in law or anything else, is to understand, is to work out for themselves the value of what they're studying and to be able to communicate that to other people. That's what you have to do when you're on a job market, when you're applying to law school, is to say, this is what I know how to do, and this is how it applies. And that's a big, that's not a deficiency of the university system. That's a feature. That's part of something that you should be doing in studying, is thinking those questions, getting out there into the working world, taking an internship and saying, oh, I'm good at this. This is how this applies. And then you can come back to an employer and say, I know how to do this, or I know how to learn how to do this.
And this is where I'll interject to say, this is where it's also incredibly valuable for students to start to connect with faculty and a range of faculty early on, because faculty love talking with students about this stuff. We love how it's so exciting, right? Because you have people that are just at the cusp of this whole new world that they're going to be entering. That's very exciting as a faculty member. I would say, and this isn't specific to anything having to do with being pre-law or not, I would say if there's one most important piece of advice that I'd give to any student starting as a college student is to seek out faculty. Frankly, if you come to our office and you want to talk to us about the things we're interested in, what part of that do we not love? We love every single part of it. And it's very exciting to get to talk with students as they're developing their interests and exploring what those interests are. So it's not as if students have to, sink or swim, figure it out for yourself. There's a lot of support, both institutionalized and in the sense of like the Fleischman Center and these various internship programs, but also informally through the relationships and mentorships that they develop with faculty.
Thank you. A question that was asked previously upon registration is kind of if I'm a first-year student on the pre-law track, what does my schedule kind of look like for the advisors? And I think the tour guides can jump in after that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'd be interested to hear what you guys ended up taking. It looks like what works best for you. There's no simple answer because there's no specific track. So the conversation, if we met at orientation, as we would tend to do over the summer. This summer may be a little strange, but the conversation that we would start with would be, well, what are you interested in doing? What kinds of things do you want to study? Law would be there as part of that conversation, but we would talk about other topics, ways you would want to approach it. If you were interested, typically if you're coming in as a freshman, we would say, we'll take some introductory classes and things that you're interested in studying. So PPL, it might be the intro philosophy course. Poli-sci would be an intro poli-sci class. Typically, we encourage students to take some kind of a mixture of what we consider exploratory courses. So that is courses that would point you toward a possible major. Even if you're committed to something already, I would consider it exploratory, intermixed with some general education requirements. So probably 1 or 2 courses for potential major and some general education requirements, and maybe an elective, something that you can take that is counting mostly for credits, which you need to graduate, but that you could take as just something you're really interested in taking. But pre-law is super flexible, so there's lots of ways that you could, if you were coming in interested in law and wanting to do psychology, your first year schedule would look very different than if you wanted to do political science.
Cool. And did any of the tour guys want to jump in and talk about their experience as first-year students?
Yeah, I can. So I'm a political science major now, and my first semester schedule, I took 2 potential major classes. So I took 1 in political science and 1 in theater, which, by the way, I didn't really know what political science was when I got to Binghamton. I found a course that I thought looked interesting to me, and it was extremely interesting, and that's kind of what sparked my political science major, which is kind of cool. So it was technically a general education requirement that I was interested in, and I found out that I really loved it, and I have loved it ever since then. And then I also took 2 more general education requirements. So I took 4 classes my first semester, which is pretty typical. Each class is about 4 credits, but you have to design your schedule to what works best for you. So I did 2 potential major and 2 general education requirement classes.
Awesome, thanks. So back to tour guys again. Did any of you want to go on study abroad while under your respective majors and also pre-law too?
So I have always wanted to study abroad, and I started looking into programs for this summer. Luckily, I didn't sign up for any because they would have gotten canceled, but there were a lot of programs that did count towards my PPL major, which I thought was really cool because as I'm a double major, I'm like 1 or 2 classes ahead in psychology. So next semester I might take 1 or 2 more PPL classes. But this summer program I found through the London School of Economics seemed really interesting. There was 3-week or 6 weeks option. So you could take 4 or 8 credits, and all of those credits that I would have taken would have counted towards my PPL major, which ultimately puts me on the pre-law track. So there are a lot of options. I looked through probably 50 different programs at different schools, and all had really great options, whether it was to study over the winter break, which is about 6 weeks, anytime over the summer, or semesterly. They had so many options, and it was difficult to narrow down just exactly what courses I wanted to study or which of my history, political science, or philosophy classes I wanted to take abroad. You can also take general education requirements abroad, so there are lots and lots of options for students of pretty much any year. It just helps if you plan it in advance to know when you have to take certain classes.
Thanks. Back to the advisors. So a lot of high school students are currently taking like AP classes and IB classes. Would any of those exams translate to credit on the pre-law, and does like SAT subject test help? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the SAT typically doesn't contribute credit, but the AP and IB certainly do all the time. There's a limit on exam credit you can bring in, 32 credits. You can swap in, if you have more than 32, you can swap in the 32 that you want. And on the Binghamton website, there are listed out the equivalencies for those exams. So it's score dependent. The higher the score, typically the more likely it's going to count for a specific class rather than general credit. But I think in the case of IB, if it's a 4 or above, in the case of AP, if it's a 3 or above, you're going to get credit for it typically, even if it's we consider it miscellaneous elective credit, so it gives you credit but doesn't count for anything specific. Some will be generic like that, but will count for a general education requirement, and some will come in as the equivalent of specific Binghamton classes that the majors would accept as equivalents of those courses. They're all useful. Yeah, they're all useful for different things. That's about as much as I'll say there.
Thank you. So I think some questions that came in a few times is kind of like the confusion. What is a pre-law track versus a major?
The track is a word that people love, and I don't use very often because I think there isn't one. There isn't a pre-law track. You can be a pre-law student, but it's not something you have to declare. It's not something that appears in your transcript. It's not something that brings with it prerequisite requirements you have to satisfy. It's just something you are. It's like you're a member of a club, you know, but not even that. You don't really have to sign up. You just come and meet with me if you're interested in law. It's the same as somebody who has a kind of a hobby, you know, it's just something that you do along the way. A major is a formal part of the degree you have to complete in order to earn your degree. So you'll sign up for a major that comes with typically 40 to 56 credits worth of requirements that contribute to the 126 credits you need to graduate. And those are requirements you have to satisfy that they differ based on the program, and those would be programs like political science, PPL, environmental studies, psychology, theater, the things that people often also tend to equate with the degree. There's the major, which is that component piece. The degree is the major plus the general education requirements plus the credit requirements kind of all together. That would be something like the Bachelor of Arts, the Bachelor of Science. Pre-law is this sort of like morass that it all kind of sits in. You know, you just kind of do it along the way.
Awesome, thank you. So I have an interesting question that came in from Jacob. So he was thinking about doing the 4+1 program with history. Have you worked with any students that are part of 4+1 also on the pre-law track intending to go into law school?
Yeah. Wendy, does poli-sci have a 4+1?
Political science does not currently have a 4+1. I do have worked, many of my students have done the 4+1 with the MPA program because they have interest in working in government, and several of those are interested in going on to law school.
Yeah, very common. For somebody who wants to, I think the 4+1 tends to be of real use to somebody who's not quite sure what graduate program they want to go to, because a 4+1, a master's, typically in a traditional academic department, so the master's in history, for example, is a great, obviously it's going to bring with it a lot of good analytical skills and archival and research experience. It's going to be broadly applicable, but also very useful for somebody who's considering a PhD or some kind of advanced work in that field. And maybe they're considering that alongside the JD. So a one-year master's in that field could be a really good way of spreading out the options. I don't think in most cases a preemptive master's before the JD, if you're set on being a lawyer, is necessary. It makes sense on a case-by-case basis. Some people also like to be credential kind of collectors, you know, which isn't always required. You know, you don't have to have 300 letters after your name, you know, if the JD is the thing that's going to get you the job.
Thank you. So a student wants to know kind of like what kind of resources are available on campus to help pre-law students, particularly, you know, if I'm bad at writing, is there a writing center, or you know, do the professors help me with that? Yeah,
there's a writing center. And they teach a Writing 111 course, amongst other things, which is an introductory freshman composition course. I highly recommend that for everybody. Take a poli-sci course, take a history course too, take an English course. You know, you're going to get a lot of good intensive writing training. Harper College specifically has a pretty extensive writing requirement that you need to fulfill over the course of your studies. So lots of opportunities to write. couple of suggestions that I would give, and Wendy probably has thoughts on this too. You need to see, if you want to improve your writing, you need to one, take your writing assignments seriously. Really put the work in, do them ahead of time so that you can work on multiple revisions, and seek out help. So talk to your professors. You know, the thing about writing at the university is that every discipline, that is every department, every academic specialization, writes a little bit differently. And learning how to succeed in each of your classes requires learning that vernacular, learning that dialect and effect. And so the best people to talk to are the people who are fluent in it. So it's go talk to your professors about, okay, I think I'm generally a strong writer, but I'm having trouble with this history paper or this poli-sci paper. Like, how is it that you write in this discipline, and what is it that I should be doing? Or take my paper. Professors may have a standard they're expecting of freshmen in a course, and you say, okay, I get that, I'm doing okay, but tear it apart. Tell me what's really going on here with my writing, and then maybe they'll be franker with you about their thoughts.
This speaks to the issue about self-awareness, and as a general rule, human beings tend to shy away from things that don't come easily to us, and so we put off mastering skills. And what I would say is that actually the weaker a student feels in terms of their writing, the more important it is early on to take writing intensive classes. Seek them out, because like any skill, we don't get better at it if we're not practicing it. And it's not sometime far off in the future that something will magically change and all of a sudden we'll be a good writer. It's developing those skills early on. So looking for the classes that are going to require you to write a lot, even if you're dreading it because you feel like your writing isn't strong, the more that you do it, the better off you're going to be. And if you feel weak in that particular skill, then take classes that require you to do that earlier. By the way, it applies to any of the skills that we've been talking about more broadly, the kinds of skills that will help students, whether they're pre-law or any other postgraduate career or post-collegiate career option that they might want to pursue. Thinking analytically, being able to speak well, those skills are going to serve you well no matter what. If you feel deficient or a student feels weak or uncertain about one of those, build on those skills early.
Thank you. So this question is from Liam. So it's talking about requirements. Is there like a preferred GPA or LSAT score or kind of extracurriculars that students can participate in at Binghamton to make them, I guess, more competitive when applying to law school?
You can do GPA and LSAT first. Higher is better in most cases. It's hard to avoid the numbers game that law school admissions is. The LSAT and the GPA are huge factors in terms of what numbers a school accepts, are really important factors in how that school is ranked, and so they weigh very heavily on law school admissions. So higher is better, but it depends on the school. At your top tier, you're looking at a median, so that is the middle of the students who are accepted, a median GPA of 3.8, 3.9 in some cases, and an LSAT of 172 or 173 out of 180. So very high, very selective, but you'll find that the lower 50% of those schools often trails out a bit. So they're going to accept students maybe down in the 160s and maybe down into the 3.5s or lower than that. That's at the top tier. You know, I think law school admissions generally, a good rule of thumb is higher is better. You want to keep things above the 3.0. And the average LSAT is about 152, 153, 154. It fluctuates every year a little bit. It's going to depend on the school. There's tons of data. We don't need to get into it today, but if you come visit me in my office, we can pour through it if you like. Tons of admissions data out there. So for every school, I have information on the median, the quartiles for both of those scores, what kind of students they tend to accept. I have information on Binghamton students accepted at those particular schools. Higher is better, above the median is better for a particular school because that puts you in stronger contention for scholarships, which can often be the more determinative thing than even admission for whether or not you decide to attend the school. In terms of extracurriculars, anything is good. Do something, get involved in it, show you care about it. Law-related stuff is good. One thing I'll say about internships and student groups, it doesn't have to be law-related, but I do push students to do some law-related stuff because you have to try it to know if you like it. So you need to get some of that experience, but you don't have to devote all of your time to it to the exclusion of other things you might like. You like movies? Join a cinema club. You like music? Play an instrument. Join the choir. You know, there's so many other ways to get involved that are all useful and all productive. And working, I do think that working is considered an extracurricular. I think it's often overlooked. If you need to work to go to school, or if you want to work to support yourself, that is something that law schools value as well. So don't feel like that's wasted time.
Could I add something about the extracurriculars, which is that it is a huge mistake to just collect lines on somebody's resume. That's not convincing to law schools that you are somehow the candidate they want just because there's a whole list of things that you've joined. Find the things that really speak to you. And particularly, as Alex said, it does not all have to be law related. In fact, one of the things that students, now this is 4 years in advance for those who are going to start college this fall, but writing the 1-page or 2-page personal statement that you include with an application to law school demonstrating why it is that you're a good candidate. It's really hard to write, and it's especially hard to write if all you can write is some version of, I love the law, I like watching law-related television shows. You have to have something very concrete to say, but it does not have to be about the internship you did in a law-related environment. It can be about something that you learned about yourself when you were serving as, for example, a residence hall assistant, or you had a small part in a play, or any number of other activities, because it's about not that you are already prepared for law school in a particular, like the substance of law, but that you have skills and abilities like resilience and judgment and an ability to engage in self-reflection and to overcome obstacles. And those can be demonstrated through any number of different experiences that you've had, not just ones that are specifically law related.
Thank you. So if I'm coming to Binghamton as a first-year student, are there kind of like pre-law scholarships that I can apply for, whether it's in my first year or as I get to sophomore or junior year?
Not through my office for the first year. There is a scholarship that we have for students involved in public service at the junior level and students with high academic achievement at the senior level. We award one each year in each case. Other scholarships, if you're interested, I would probably direct you to external scholarships, and there is an office of external scholarships and awards that I would probably point you to in the first place. I don't know those off the top of my head.
So that's an interesting question that I got. So is it more likely that I can get into a top tier school by attending Binghamton, or can I go anywhere for undergrad?
To go to a top tier school? I guess is the question, do you have to go to Binghamton, or can Binghamton get you into a top tier school?
Can Binghamton get me to a top tier school, or can I just attend any college?
So law school admissions are very individual. So we have students who attend top schools every year. Coming to Binghamton, I couldn't guarantee that you'd be able to get in. Just as going to a very top-ranked undergrad, I couldn't guarantee that you get into a top-ranked law school. It's very dependent on how you present yourself as an applicant. I can say that students at Binghamton do have success at top-ranked schools every year. It depends on the particular year where exactly they're going, but they do. And it really hinges on high levels of academic achievement, high levels of self-awareness, as Wendy mentioned, strong writing skills, all the things we've been talking about. People who can demonstrate that in considerable measure do well. And what I would say in choosing an undergraduate institution, I would say go to a place where you feel like you can be successful, and a place that has the resources and has the opportunities that you feel like you're poised to take advantage of. And if you feel like you'd fit in and you feel like you can, and this is, I gave exactly the same advice for law schools. If the place seems like a place where you can go and there are things you can do and things you're excited to do and things you can take advantage of, it's probably the right place for you.
Thank you, Alex and Wendy, for presenting about pre-law and political science, and thank you for tour guides and admission staff for supporting the back end. If you do have any other questions, I do invite you to join our counselor chat hour. I'm gonna put the link into the chat function if you want to copy and paste that to your toolbar. So that chat hour is every day between 8:30 to 5 o'clock. So if you have any other questions that come up later on, please find us there. Otherwise, I believe Alex did share his phone number and email address with all of you, if you have any other pre-law specific questions. But otherwise, thank you very much for joining me on this webinar, and have a great night.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.